Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. As you've said, I should have contributed the first day, but sometimes because of the demand, it becomes impossible. But let me contribute actually to the President's address. And I start from actually saying that this is my first time to be in opposition. And sometimes it is very good to be in opposition because I've been on the other side of the aisle. And you end up defending indefendable. Yeah? But being on opposition is the best thing actually that I'm enjoying this time round to serve in this House. Mr. Speaker, looking at the presidential address, we are being told that Kenya has matured democratically. I doubt that. Because Kenyan politics are based on tribal, clan, ethnicity, money, the rich and the poor. So we are far from being democratic. The only time that I'll say that we are happy and we have matured democratically, Mr. Speaker, is when we don't have contestation. Because over the years, we've had contestation in our elections. We've seen what happened. But I must congratulate Kenyans for having been peaceful this time round when we had election. As the saying goes, minority have their say, and majority have their way. But one day we will realize that the minority will also have their way. Mr. Speaker, from the presidential address, I will look at the issues of the ministers appearing before the House. And some of the people are saying it has been difficult to get the ministers. And I don't want to be the prophet of doom. Whether we have ministers in the House or not, the music will be the same. Because I remember in the last two parliaments, we've had ministers appearing before the committee of the whole. They have never been sitting in the House. But we had even summons to summon ministers who actually defied the summon of the House. And I hope in the process of actually introducing ministers appearing before the Senate to answer questions, we will not be sent cast to come and answer questions on behalf of the ministers. That will be disastrous for this country. Mr. Speaker, the ministers are not members of this House. The only time maybe if they will appear without this mess being here. Yeah? So, we want to see how Kenya Kwanza are going to introduce ministers sitting in this House and answering questions. That is the day we'll have a big challenge in this country. Number two is the issues of Hustler Fund. Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chelagay, what is out of order and Senator Fatuma is doing so well? Go to the dispatch box.
Mr. Speaker, I had to interrupt my leader because and my former member in my jailer committee, but him being a senior lawyer, I expected her to provide proper guidance, because we might end up misleading. I raise only look at Article 153 of the Constitution, sub-Article 3. It talks about a cabinet secretary attending a committee of the National Assembly or the Senate when required by the committee and answer any question concerning a matter for which the cabinet secretary is responsible. But the Senator Dullo making assertion that Chief Administrative Secretary will appear before the committees is not good. It's misleading the country, and I hope her being a leader in this house should not be the one misleading. Yet the Constitution is crystal clear under Article 153, sub-Article 3, on who should appear before any committee, so that we don't get mixed up. The President suggested, and the standing orders will be looked at, but that one does not mean that the Chief Administrative Secretaries or even, and I remember, Mr. Speaker, in the hindsight of institutional memory, we were together with on several occasions where we turned away Chief Administrative Secretaries. I remember you used to serve in national security, and I hope you'll continue serving in it. And you remember we returned the current governor of Narok, Governor Tutu, when he was the Chief Administrative Secretary of Interior. So please, Mr. Speaker, let the leader guide the nation appropriately, not mislead the nation.
Yes, Senator Maruma, what is out of order again?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's not about Senator Fatuma Dullo's contribution, but I'm trying to see how we are doing for time. It's almost 5:15, and there are several people who are supposed to contribute. I'm wondering if we continue with this pace of 15 minutes, I will only get 6 people to contribute, and we'll be having more contributors who want to contribute to the presidential speech. So I want to move that we reduce the time. We might reduce the time. Number 2, maybe you within standing order number 1, Speaker, we can see how, Speaker, we can disallow points of order because they are eating into our time. Yet there are people who have already contributed, and if we continue allowing these points of order, then we might not get time to really contribute. I seek your indulgence, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mwaluma, you know this motion is in progress almost. We are at the tail end, and it is not possible to limit the debate at this point, according to standing order 111. But I've been actually requesting members, at your own discretion, senators, you can save some time for your colleagues, because can do 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So I'm unable to help at this injunction. I know the interest with all the members. I have very long lists from both sides, but I'm unable to help at this injunction. Senator Fatuma Dullo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I'll be very fast and brief in my contribution. I've heard Senator Cherargei about CAS. And actually, it's good that he has confirmed we have turned away CAS in our previous meetings. And I've said actually in my statement, there is a possibility of actually sending CAS to this House. And that is what we are going to disallow. So I don't see if there is anything that is out of order. And number 2, when he quotes Article 153, it's very clear that the cabinet ministers are going to appear before the committee of the whole or committee of different departments. That is okay. We have no problem with that. But the only time that we are going to challenge is when we have those ministers to come and sit with us in this House. And that is very clear from my side. The other point I wanted to raise, Senator Cherargei, you are eating into my time, which I think the Speaker needs to protect me. the issues of PPP. Mr. Speaker, as many of my colleagues have said, there was no mention of issues of corruption in the address of the president. What killed this country is corruption. And I know very well, for the last 2 terms I've been in this House, counties have been grappling with the issues of PPP. And a very good example, even national government, the issues of mess. They first started with PPP. And when they realized PPP is not going to work, they dropped it and went to contract, an agreement. PPP, if we are not carefully going to see how we can handle or come up with a proper strategy, that is a source of corruption. And I hope Kenyans are fully aware of what is happening and what will happen to PPP if we don't have proper structures in place. And number 2, counties, they don't even have capacity to run PPP. But unfortunately, most of them, they end up actually starting PPP. Along the way, they drop. So PPP, if we are not very careful, Kenyans are not going to get value for their money. And also, it's a source of corruption. If Kenya Kwanza is ready to deal with corruption, we have no problem with the PPP. And I don't know where they are going to get money to run PPP when they are crying there is no money in the country. Mr. Speaker, the other point I wanted to raise is on a hustler fund. After election, every leader comes on board, they introduce a fund. We have youth fund, which we have seen actually as it has not benefited Kenyan youths. It's actually failing today, if I'm not wrong. Many of our youths are jobless. Many of our youths have dropped out of school. We don't know what youth funds is doing in this country. Number 2, we have seen women fund. Majority of our mothers are hustling in the market, everywhere. Yeah? So when we talk of hustler fund, and it's good to define what hustler is in this country, and I hope it is not rewarding those who have politically supported certain quotas. 80% of this country are hustlers. 80%. We want to see how this hustler fund is going to be introduced, how it's going to help Mama Mboga, Boda Boda, Jua Kali, and everybody else. But the challenge is, where are we going to get these funds from? Are we going to collapse the rest of the funds? Or are we going to create another independent fund? Are Kenyans ready for this hustler fund? Those are the questions we need to ask ourselves. Mr. Speaker, the other issue I wanted to raise is on issues of, Mr. Speaker, the issue of oversight fund and CDF. Oversight fund, CDF. If you see CDF, it's financing security, financing schools, and bursary. The same thing national government is doing. The same thing county government is doing. Is it really helping Kenyans? It's not. Yeah? I come from a county where there is insecurity, people are fighting each other after every 1 week. It doesn't pass. And yet, a member of parliament is given money for insecurity. They end up doing nothing. Yeah? And we are saying CDF is doing a lot of work. Why can't we collapse these projects? Mr. Speaker, I beg you to give me 2 minutes because there was point of orders that actually disrupted my debate. Please, I beg you. There is a very important point I want to drive home, Mr. Speaker. So the issues of CDF, our kids, especially the ones from pastoral areas, the animals are dead, the drought is hitting, kids are not going to school, kids are dying of malnutrition, grown-ups are dying. Surely, what are we doing about them? Yeah? People stood here and talked about drought intervention. What drought intervention? In my county, they were given 600 bags of rice and 360 bags of maize to each sub-county. Surely, that is 1 meal for a day, which is not enough for everybody. As my colleagues have said, and I'll say it here, pastoralist communities are treated in this country as a second-class citizen. Why can't Kenya Kwanza allocate 3.55 billion the way they are allocated to fertilizer to pastoral counties? Sink boreholes. People are dying of hunger and lack of water. We forget about dams in this country. But we're very happy fertilizers are there. And we wonder when those fertilizers were procured. That is a question mark that we need to ask ourselves. Kids are not going to school today because of drought. Nobody is even talking about it. And we are very proud that Kenya Kwanza, we are the ones leading the government. We do marvelous. Yes, you will do marvelous. But what are the pastoralist communities doing, or they are suffering today, and nobody is actually talking about them? Right now, I was just sent a message by somebody where they are saying people are dropping dead. Mr. Speaker.
I'm giving you the...
Mr. Speaker, I was given 2 minutes, and Senator Cherargei should give me time to finish.
No. Actually,
Mr. Speaker.
You have 3 more minutes to finish.
3 more minutes, Mr. Speaker.
Mind.
Thank you.
Senator Cherargei, what is it?
Mr. Speaker, issues of fertilizer. We have 4 months. Mr. Speaker, can you tell Cherargei to sit down?
I give him the opportunity to prosecute his point of order. You know, you are 2 senior members of this House, and you know one another very much.
But he's interrupting.
So, Senator Cherargei, we want really to know between the two of you, yes. Every time you speak, she puts a point of order. Every time she is on the floor, you put point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I raise Standing Order 101 because Senator Dullo is misleading the House. You remember this government is only less than 30 days. And arguing that whether this procurement of fertilizers were done, she is aware that the government exists. And I'm very sorry because it looks like Senator Dullo, being in opposition, is make some statements that she doesn't even believe in it. Mr. Speaker, the country should be patient. 28 days is not even enough to make a baby, Mr. Speaker. So even pregnancy takes 9 months, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, under 101, the Standing Order 101, Senator Dullo should not introduce the points of argument in her submission, Mr. Speaker, because if she wants a substantive reply, then she knows the procedure that needs to be done.
Proceed, Senator Dullo.
Mr. Speaker, I think Senator Cherargei should really be serious about the point of order he's raising. Because if I want to challenge the issues of fertilizer, it's not a priority for us today. We need food on the table. So if you want to tell me that food is not a priority, we wait for 3 more months for us to use fertilizer. That is not a solution to our problems. No, I don't need point of information. I don't want to be informed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Senator Fatuma, kindly finish up.
I am finishing up, Mr. Yes. Speaker. Thank you. The issues of judiciary given more resource allocation, Mr. Speaker. For me, that is not a priority. What I would have expected the president to do is to increase county government budgetary allocation from 15 to 35% or 40%. That is where we need that money. It's not in judiciary. Judiciary, in as much as we say they are fighting corruption, they are the most corrupt in this country, and I dare say that. Mr. Speaker, from the statement of the president, when he says that he has increased resource to judiciary, and I'm sad to say this. The other day, we've seen judges queuing with us, receiving the president. This is not the institution. The institution is at the High Court judiciary. For the last 10 years I've been in this house, I've never seen CJ coming and queuing with us. What does that mean? What do Kenyans say about that? On top of that, they are given increased resource allocation. It's a question mark that we need to ask ourselves. And Kenyans are saying, Mr. Speaker, I am finishing. I am finishing, Mr. Speaker. I am finishing, Mr. Speaker.
Your time is up, Senator Dullo. Kindly, your time is up.
Mr. Speaker.
Your time is up. Okay, let us, next is...
Mr. Speaker, I am concluding. And Senator Sheria and Senator Kinyua, allow me to finish. Finally, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order from the majority leader.
Tulia, Fatuma. Mr. Speaker, I'd wish to understand Senator Fatuma Dullo's line of thinking. Is it her submission that we have such fickle characters in the office of the Chief Justice and Deputy Chief Justice, such that as simple act of honor, just receiving a president in parliament, will alter their thinking in how they run the judiciary of this republic? Secondly, Mr. Speaker, is it also her submission that we shouldn't, as parliament, team up with the executive in increasing funding to the judiciary so that there is access to justice, including in our own county of Isiolo, where when we went for a campaign, the residents of Isiolo were pleading that they need a high court or even a court of appeal built in our county? How are we going to achieve that if their senator is here on the floor saying that we shouldn't increase the allocation to the judiciary? I want to understand that, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
You have very few seconds to...
No, I have very few minutes to finish. Mr. Speaker. Seconds,
please.
Seconds, Mr. Speaker. Do you want to tell us, Senator Cheriot, Majority Leader of this House?
And when you have the right trend, you know your time is up, actually.
My time is up, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
I am right to my opinion, and I have a right to have my opinion. But what I'm saying is there are right procedures in actually increasing resource. And my submission is it judiciary or county governments that require increased resource allocation? Yeah?
Thank you.
That is what I want to ask. Thank you.